Sudeep, we've discussed a few times on the show that emerging businesses tend to be very, very people dependent when they start, people and relationship dependent. And at a stage when the leadership seeks to change this transformation, change this approach to sales and have a transformation business, it is met with a lot of friction. And more
Hmm.
often than not, businesses say, okay, this is going to make my business suffer in the short term. So let me not touch it too much, touch it or disturb it too much. And they usually give up on this endeavor.
Yeah, that's actually true. And the need for transformation does not come just because the leader wants to transform.
Right,
It comes because the business has to now operate in a different orbit. So therefore, there is something that will have to change. Same
right,
inputs will not give you different outputs. And hence we've seen a lot of retail businesses trying to do, sell more scientifically by doing retail classification, relooking at their product portfolio, introduction of completely new product lines, uh, moving from online to offline, doing direct expansion, reducing dependence on wholesale, etc., etc.
right. And failing to do this is why most businesses get stuck in what I call the long chew.
Correct. Yeah.
They become push sale dependent and they struggle to get out of this phase, which they ideally should, to move into the acceleration phase of the business. But most businesses, because they can't manage this transformation, get stuck in this long chew. Not just to accelerate, even to thrive in the long term, a transformation from people dependent and relationship dependent business must transform into a system driven business.
That is true. Now, before you scare the businesses too much, let me also say that the good news, and this is a belief that I think both of us share, that
Right,
if you transform this well, it is doable. And hence,
absolutely.
businesses don't need to lose hope. And the first thing that usually gets transformed is your sales function. For you to be able to transform your sales function, it can happen also without any significant loss of sales. So that's the good news.
Right.
uh, but the bad news is that because you have to transform the sales function, you can't start with the sales function, it has to start with you.
Exactly. So I call it the 5 C's of sales transformation.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so why don't we understand 5 C's, and
Okay.
let's take the example of a business which is currently very wholesale dependent. So
Ah,
they have
perfect.
indirect distribution, and that's how they are operating. Now they need to get to direct distribution. So what are the 5
Yes,
C's, Sharon?
perfect. The first one is clarify.
Hmm.
The leadership, the business owner, the entrepreneur needs to be extremely clear on why they want this transformation. What is the benefit they're going to get out of doing this transformation? And it's not just them, the entire leadership team must be sure on saying what will happen to the company if we did not do this specific transformation. Like you said about wholesale dependent business trying to expand their retail reach. What happens to the company if this doesn't happen?
Yeah.
This clarity has to start with the leadership team. You can't go start with, like you said, can't go start with the sales team saying build retail distribution.
Correct. Correct. And I think therefore, when you say clarify, you mean explain the why. Yeah.
Exactly. It is about the why.
Is it about the why? So, which is what Simon Sinek also says in his video. People buy, people do things because of the why, not because of the what. So, therefore,
Absolutely.
in our case, there could be two, three reasons that could be used to explain this. One, the cost of doing business. Uh,
Hmm.
Cost of doing wholesale is going to remain high for getting the same amount of sales, because the wholesaler will need significant amount of discounting, and because they're adding certain value to you, and they will only sell when there is a certain amount of demand, etc. Number two is that it is also heavy on your working capital, because you're working with smaller number of people, higher credit, more discounting, etc., etc. Number three, I think in the long run it is not great for your brand, because finally wholesale wins when they are able to supply it at a discounted rate. So the brand therefore becomes equated to discounting, or something which is only available in a very sporadic or very irregular manner. So it could have, multiple ways, but clarifying the why becomes critical.
Absolutely. Now, on to the second C,
Okay.
which I call chart. You can't just state the objective and say, okay, this is what we're going to achieve. As a leadership team, you are supposed to lay out the blueprint. You have to say what it's going to take to achieve this objective we've set for ourselves. Now, when you're going to achieve something specific, there will be a few minor things that you will have to let go.
Yeah.
So the leadership team should be aware of the compromises and the speed at which they're going to execute and how the team has to go about executing this. Therefore, that is the chart, the second part, charting the path to success, the second C of the five.
Excellent. Which means setting up an executional roadmap. Yeah.
Exactly.
So therefore, if you were to guide your team on how to increase direct distribution, you'll possibly say, okay, step one, map out retailers and wholesalers that are there in your own route list today, and number two, that
Right.
are existent in the market, the ones that you don't supply to. Yeah. Number two, maybe within that, make your targets. How many more retailers would you go to? Prioritize them according to possibly their potential in your category. Yeah. Prepare
Right.
a pitch which allows you to sell to them, and then go out and start increasing your distribution in a periodic manner such that you are able to achieve the retail expansion within a certain time frame.
Perfect. That's a perfect example you've chosen. The third C is to convey.
Hmm.
Now, this is something that you've spoken about quite a few times on the show.
Hmm.
About it's not just about presenting to the sales team, and this is by far the most underrated aspect of sales transformation, because by the time you've charted the path to success, the leadership team would have heard this multiple number of times. So, as a part of the leadership team, it will be like hearing something again and again and again and almost getting bored with it, right? But when you take it to your team, especially the sales team, they are hearing something for the first time. And for them, this could seem something so tangential, almost as if the culture of the company is going to change. Like the earth is going to shatter if they make this change. And usually the fear is, I don't know how to do that. You're yet to tell, you will give them the chart that you prepared. But the initial reaction is that of reluctance or saying, I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. So therefore, over communication becomes important. And you need to tell them why this is happening, and the first one, and tell them what are the benefits of this happening. So all that you did to clarify yourself, you've got to put it in front of the sales team and say, this is why your life is going to be better, my life is going to be better, and the company and the brands are going to be better. Convey is the third C.
Excellent. No, I think, and you've already said this, over communicate. Find all the occasions when you're addressing your sales team in open houses, town halls, you're meeting them in the head office, you're meeting them in the market. Talk about it. Communicate over and over and over
Exactly.
again. And don't just talk about the output metric, but some of the input metrics also. So if you have laid down a chart, then maybe the first phase is about listing which are the
Hmm.
retailers, which are the wholesalers. So talk about listing a number of times so that people see that it is important. Why is it important? Then move to the next level. But communication over communication possibly, and taking every opportunity to talk about it might do the job for you.
Exactly. Now, the fourth one is check. This is again something that you've spoken about quite a few times, which is in sales, in business, or in life. You only get what you follow up on. So once you've laid down the objectives, you can't just hold people accountable at the end of the month or end of the year. You have to constantly keep following up so that it kind of the entire vision seeps into the ethos of the company. And they've got to establish themselves in on your side, as in to say, I am a party to this vision. And until then, you can't stop following up until this becomes culture in the company. Repeated questions, repeated follow up, repeated checks, repeated reviews is the only way to get this done. And what happens is you set these objectives instead of calling up the sales team and saying, number kya hua hai at the end of the month. If you can follow up and saying how many retail outlets have you opened, that will make the difference when you have to get into the check phase.
Yeah, I love this, and I like to use the phrase "measure what you treasure." So
Exactly.
if you are going to treasure this distribution, you need to be able to measure it and measure the input as well as the output metric, as we spoke about. And one more aspect that I'll possibly add is that if you're able to
Hmm.
build a uniform way of measuring the progress that people are making, and then when you and
Hmm.
in every occasion you over communicate on that metric, over a period of time people start recognizing that metric and start living by that metric. And then, because they want to improve, they also start discovering how is this metric arrived at. And therefore you
Right.
get your team on that adrenaline dose to improve that metric every time they meet you or every time they face you, and thereby they become a part of the same vision, mission, and therefore respond to your repeated flashing of that metric, repeated reviews, repeated checking.
Right. I think that leads on perfectly to the fifth C, which is I call the carrot. The sales teams respond brilliantly to carrots because that's what they're
Hmm.
attuned to. A carrot meaning
Yeah.
incentive. So this is where the companies got to walk the talk. The sales leaders have to walk the talk and say, I've given you this objective, and that is what I'm going to tailor your incentives around. Don't take away your volume value targets completely, but there is a weightage you can start giving to the new objective that you set so that it is not okay to drop number value and number, but it is common sense. It will drop a little. It's not going to drop at the beginning, but the moment they know what they are being incentivized on, and that is in line with the transformation objective, then they start following the bread. They start going after those objectives. Even if they miss the first month, they see a dip in the incentive. Second month they will be on, because if their incentives are aligned with the company's objectives, what
Yeah,
more do you need?
precisely. In fact, I've done this in the past in multiple categories and multiple states across the country. And I can tell you, if you plan it well
Hmm.
and if you anticipate what is the kind of dip that you're going to see from wholesale, you can actually set yourself the right kind of retail expansion targets and the throughput or the sell-in target to each one of them, such that you are able to not only cover up but make additional gains. Yeah. So therefore, one, that is possible.
Absolutely.
Number two, like you said, because you want to get this done, you have to have some kind of a carrot, and alongside carrot, I would say, Sharon, you also need some kind of an enablement. So give them something
Right.
which they can use, a story, a tool, an enabler. uh, you know
Hmm.
and I've seen people carrying welcome kits for new dealers that are getting added to their route list. Yeah. So give
Right.
them some conversation point which makes them feel confident when they are stepping onto that pulpit to recruit that dealer, and incentivize them. And you got to decide whether you are going to incentivize them on output or input, and whatever you think is the right thing, whatever
Hmm.
is going to be the biggest hump to cross, incentivize them there. And like you said, their action will get aligned with the company's vision.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So that's the
excellent.
five C's:
Excellent.
clarify, chart,
And
convey,
carrot.
check, and carrot. The five C's of sales
Excellent.
transformation.
This is brilliant, Sharon. I'm sure this will make it very easy for everybody to remember. And may all your businesses transform to the levels that you really want to. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sudeep.